Hey, what's up? In this video, we're gonna look at how you can have podcast listeners go from people who just listen to podcasts to email subscribers and even paying customers. In the last video, we looked at how to grow your email list by being a podcast guest, and I mentioned the role a landing page builder plays. You want to have a tool that is easy for you to use and leverage that to create web pages that then you direct podcast listeners toward. This specific video revolves around a concept I've learned from Interview Valet's founder, Tom Schwab, and that's the concept of the three yeses. Yes, yes, heck yes. The principle of the three yeses is related to landing pages and conversions. If you think about it, a landing page typically has one goal and is having a person who lands on that page do something. Sign up for your email list, make a phone call, book a coaching call or something like that. And on a landing page, typically you want to have one call to action. So you want to have people focus on doing one thing and one thing only. You may think that you should do a similar thing when it comes to podcast guesting. So you should create a landing page and have just one call to action. Is that the case? Not really, says Tom Schwab, and rightfully so. As I mentioned, Tom Schwab is the creator of Interview Valet, and with his company they help people land podcast interviews, and they've done a lot of research, and Tom has found that actually not having one call to action but three different things on a specific page you direct podcast listeners converts better. And here's why. You see, the key difference between a normal landing page and a page that you build for podcast guesting purposes has to do with the type of traffic you drive toward that page. On a normal landing page, you typically drive cold traffic, which are people who don't know pretty much anything about you, your brand, your business, and what you do. A page you build for podcast guesting, on the other hand, is different for the fact that you drive warm traffic. People already know you because they have been listening to you on a podcast or on several podcasts being interviewed. So the people who are visiting that specific page are actually people who already are familiar with who you are and what you do. So that's why if for a standard landing page you should have one call to action, Tom Schwab from Interview Valet teaches us that for a podcast guest landing page we should have three different things, what he calls the three yeses. So what are these yeses exactly? The first one is having people who land on the page take a small action. An example of that could be download this checklist. It's something that doesn't require a lot of time or effort, and a checklist is typically something that is easy for people to consume. So one can sign up for your email list, get the checklist, read it, and start using it and get the benefits pretty much right away. The second yes is a medium-sized yes, and that requires a bigger investment from the person. It could be, for example, sign up for a webinar. So a webinar is typically longer, requires more time than consuming a checklist. Another thing could be, for example, buy my $7 or $10 ebook. In some cases, you could even experiment and have a relatively inexpensive course as the medium size yes. Let's say you have a $97 course, you could have that on your page. And the third and final yes, the big yes, is actually the one that requires the most investment, both in terms of time and money. Perhaps you provide coaching, so the big yes could be hire me to coach. Maybe you have a premium course or something like that, a program. If that's the case, then that would be your big yes. So to recap, small yes, something like download the checklist. Medium size, yes, something like sign up for this webinar or buy this ebook. And then the third, the big yes, hire me for coaching purposes, join my premium program, and things like that. And in case you're curious and wondering what this type of pages look like with the 3 yeses, I have a couple of examples to show you. The first one is from Nicole Holland from interviews.convert.com. Here you see she points to a 6-point checklist. So this is the page she mentioned during the interview we did. Down here she puts things into context. So she says, hey, if you're here, it's probably because you've listened to my interview with Jan on the 360 Entrepreneur. She links to her podcasts, to the interview we did for one of her shows, and she also gives some pointers on how to connect with her further. Keep in mind that your landing page can be straight to the point and pretty minimalistic. I have a couple of examples to show you, and you will really understand what I mean. One is by a client of mine, Catherine Kemp-Gailey. You see, this is all that's on the page. You see, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jan. Here are the resources I mentioned. If one clicks this, an opt-in form appears, so there are no distractions. One thing and one thing only to do, and that's getting the freebie. Another example here, Ashley Folks from Mad Lemmings. He mentioned a page for the Podcast Success Summit. He has a free SEO checklist. So also here you see no distractions, no other buttons, no icons, just an arrow pointing down. Enter your email address and get the cheat sheet. And then I have a couple of examples of mine. So I mentioned I use a tool called Thrive Architect to build the landing pages. And the cool thing about Thrive is that you can customize templates and you can also create your own layouts. So for me, for example, you'll see 2 pages look pretty much the same with just a couple of tweaks. So instead of spending quite some time creating all the different pages, I spent some time once to create a layout that I like. So to say, I want this picture here, I want text here, I want the button there with that color, and so forth. And then once I'm happy with this, I can save it. And whenever I want to replicate the layout, I can literally do so in a couple of clicks. And you can see the second page is for a different thing, the Infopreneur Summit, but it's the same layout. So it's really quick for me to duplicate a page, just change a couple of things like the name of the podcast or summit in this case, change the name of the host. If I want to use images like I do in this case, change the image below and the sentence here. So in just a couple of minutes, I have a landing page that's up and running and ready to start collecting email addresses. In terms of the 3 yeses, here's an example of a landing page by Tom Schwab. He created it for the Podcast Success Summit. So the way he structures the page, typically at the top there is an image of the podcast artwork or the host. There is some context here, some pointers in terms of what you will get from the specific freebie that is mentioned. And then here we see Tom smiling, ways to connect with him. And then at the bottom we see different yeses. So we have a downloadable, we have the ebook, we have the checklist, and we can also buy. So keep in mind that on your landing page that you create for podcasts, since you are directing warm traffic to it, you want to make sure that you have several yeses, because somebody may be ready not only to sign up for your email list, but even to start working with you pretty much right away.